Hey YouTube family, welcome back in. Brandon Taylor's Fire Smoke Cooking. Today we are going to be making pot roast and gravy. I have this nice looking chuck roast that I got. I actually got this from Aldi. I paid $22.50 for it. It was $5.79 a pound. I remember back in the day when chuck roast used to be $2.99 a pound and sometimes cheaper, but it's the sign of the time, so it is what it is. But today we're just going to go ahead and keep it really simple. I'm going to sear this thing off and put it in the crock pot and let it go for the day while I'm ripping and running, and come back and make a gravy to go over the top of it, and we'll be able to put that on top of either potatoes or rice or something like that. Typically when I do chuck roast, I normally always put potatoes and carrots with it, but I'm just not really wanting that right now. I just want the meat and the gravy. So we're going to go ahead and whip that up, put a lot of onions and bell peppers in there, and it's going to be a good one. So you guys stay tuned. We'll get into this. All right, family, so here's our roast. You can see it has a lot of marbling through it. It's a really good chuck roast, a nice looking chuck roast. And we're gonna keep it simple. So what I have here, I actually have some homemade brisket rub that I have made up here. It has salt, pepper, garlic, onion, and smoked paprika in it. And that's all I'm going to use to season my roast here. Gonna season it up on both sides, get the edges. We're gonna let that seasoning set into the roast on both sides. Then we're gonna go to the stove and sear it up. So just wanna show you this process, and then when it's time to sear, we'll go over there and get this bad boy put in the crock pot. See you guys back here in a minute. Okay, so now that we have it seasoned, let's go ahead and get it seared off. I like to sear my roast, so this kind of locks in the flavor in my opinion, and just gets everything going. You don't have to do this step and to still turn out great, but I just prefer to sear off the roast before we put it in the crock pot. So again, you're just looking for a nice golden color. It doesn't necessarily you're definitely not going to cook it all the way through, and you're not looking to try to, but you're just looking to get a nice sear on the outside of that roast. Make sure you get both sides. All right, so now let's get this bad boy in the crock pot. I have here is a couple cups of beef stock that we're going to use. I have some chopped up peppers and onions. You can kind of use as many or as little as you like. If you love a lot, use a lot. If you don't like many, you don't have to. There's no specified amount for that. And we're just going to go ahead on and put in our 2 cups of beef base. It's going to help. That's going to help create our au jus as we're cooking our roast. It's automatically going to let off a lot of juice on its own, but I like to have quite a bit. That way, if you make a sandwich or you're putting it over rice, you have quite a bit of liquid for the au jus or the gravy. So once you get a little bit of that liquid down on the bottom of your crock pot and some of the onions, you go ahead and get that roast in there in that crock pot. If it's a big one, just stuff it on in there. As it cooks, it will begin to break down. And once you have it in, you're just going to finish putting the rest of your onions, peppers on the top, and then you're going to finish putting off the rest of your liquid in there as well. Alright guys, so after you get everything back in the crock pot, finish putting the rest of that beef broth in there, cover it up. I have my crock pot, I'm going to set it on high, and we're just going to let this bad boy cook. We're cooking it tender, and it's not necessarily tied. So we've had it cooking now on high for roughly 3.5 hours. You can see all this liquid that has already come from that. A lot of this is fat that's rendered out of that. And we're actually going to, well, I don't know yet, but we're probably going to use some of this fat in order to make our gravy. But you can see that it's cooking really nicely, but it still has a long way to go as far as getting tender. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take this roast and flip it. That way you can kind of get even cooking on both sides. Now the fat is rendered pretty good, but the meat, like I said, is still fairly tough. So you just want to go ahead and give it a good flippity flip. All right, family, so we're back. It's been another 1.5 hours, so we've had a total cook time so far of 5 hours. And I did come in, and our meat is starting to shred nicely now. So it's gotten to the point to where it's nice and tender. And as you can see, there's some fat on top of this here meat, or on top of the liquid we have. So what I want to actually do, I'm going to take a big spoon here, and I'm going to skim this fat off the top there. And we're just going to actually add this into a skillet. And we're going to use this fat, and we're going to make a roux, and we're going to go ahead and make a gravy. So we're just gonna take it. I'm gonna put on the skillet, or on the top of the stove rather, and bring it to a boil and get our flour and stuff in there and just make a nice roux. And we're gonna build that roux in order to make our gravy. So that's what we're gonna do. I'll show you guys that process in just a minute. Guys, so we're back. I have the grease, or the rendered fat from the roast, on top of the stove. Now I do have a little bit of the drippings from the meat in here as well. That'll be perfectly fine. It does not have to be perfect. But once you go ahead and get those rendered fats up to a boil like this, we're gonna go ahead and add in our flour. Now I got about 1.5 cups, or just a little over 1.5 cups of fat out of that roast. And you just wanna go ahead and add in, well, you can add in the same amount of flour if you're looking for a very thick gravy. I'm not looking for a gravy that's quite as thick, but we still want it to have a little bit of body to it. So what I did, I just added in about 1/2 cup of flour, and we're just going to go ahead and stir that on up and get that mixed together and incorporate it really well. All right, so we've had it going. This has probably been stirring now for about a minute, and we're just trying to get it nice and loose. It's still going to have some clumps because we haven't added any liquid in here yet other than that fat. So I do have a little bit of beef stock. I'm going to turn my eye on low, and we're just going to add in some of this beef stock and continue to let it thin out some and stir until it gets to a point to where we're ready to mix it back in with our roast. All right, so we've got our gravy to the point, or to the thickness where we're ready to transfer it and add it back into our roast. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, go ahead and add that back in here, that roux. And what's going to happen is, once this continues to cook, it's going to continue to get thicker and thicker. So we're just going to leave it on low and let it continue to cook for a little while until everything thickens up. Go ahead and shred my meat, because you can see now it's falling apart nice and tender. So we're doing good. We'll come back in a few minutes. All right, guys, so now it's time to go ahead and plate up and make our dinner. See how this beef and gravy turned out. Let's look at all that beef. Nice and hot. That gravy is nice and silky. It's not too much. It's just the way we want it, to where it just kind of blends in with the meat. And with the rice, we have some green beans here. We'll go ahead and make our plate. And then spoon that beef right on top of that rice. And that's gonna be a good meal right there, guys. Yes, sir. Let's go ahead and get a bite. Guys, so there's our dinner. Took roughly about 6 hours total cook time. That was on high. I put it on low once we made our gravy to get it all finished up. This is exactly what we're looking for. If I want rice today, if tomorrow we want sandwiches, we can go ahead and turn this into some beef sandwiches or chopped beef sandwiches. So it's really good meal and versatile, and it stretches quite a bit. Let's get a bite. Amen. That is so good. Super tender, super flavorful, not overly salty, which I hate. And again, with this rice, or you could have put on potatoes, over potatoes. Whatever you want to do with it, it's going to work out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Till the next time, God bless. We'll see you later.